Here we are, Ian and fan favorite Sarah joining us on the exit review.
Hey everyone, it's good to see both of you.
Yeah, great to see you, Sarah.
Good to see you. Thank you for inviting me, Sam, for this most prestigious interview. You know.
Oh yeah. No, I knew this would be a good one. A sad one for many people, but people want to hear what you have to say, Sarah. It's we're not getting any more Sarah in the episodes, but we need to get all the Sarah content we can get while we have it.
Well, yeah, it's been really, really fun to watch back, honestly. And obviously the fan reaction has been nice. So thank you to everyone who enjoyed watching me. Thanks to Ian for giving me a good edit. But yeah, I like Ian said earlier, in a different podcast, I really didn't know what the reaction would be to bringing back a first boot. And I was terrified of having a Francesca moment because the only person to ever be brought back that was a first boot in Real Survivor got voted out first again. So very glad that wasn't my story.
Do you want to tell the story about how I almost screwed you over in the first challenge? I don't know if this is out there.
Oh my God, that first challenge, watching that back was the hardest I laughed of any episode all season. I was a bumbling fool out there, but it was production. It was Ian.
Production, that sneaky bastard.
So that challenge was the one where we were blindfolded and running with cups to fill them from the fountain. And so this was the first challenge. I wanted to win so bad that I was like, I'm going to do anything to fill my cup. So when it's time to go, I start running in a flat out sprint forward. And Ian is standing right in front of me. Didn't know who it was at the time. Turned out it was Ian. He was filming and I ran right into him, blindfolded, dropped my cup, and it was smashed on the ground. So it had a huge hole in it immediately. And then there were 2 other times that I ran into people and dropped my cup. It was just a total disaster. And then after I had hit Ian, I continued to run. And the first time I got to the fountain, I just absolutely obliterated my leg and I had a huge bruise that was bleeding. And then I was just in a daze for the rest of the challenge. So I'm just going really slow.
Yes.
I felt bad. It's in the bonus scenes actually, but yeah, I was just standing. I was I'm going to get this really cool shot of everybody running right towards the camera. And somehow I didn't compute that meant they're blindfolded, they can't see you. So the challenge starts, I'm filming everybody. And then it wasn't until, I think I was just too excited that, the season's starting. And then it wasn't until basically you hit me that I was wait a second, this is a really dumb thing to be doing. Someone's going to run right into me. And then you basically trampled me. And then it kind of threw you guys off a bit in that challenge. And Cooper and Bailey were screaming at me you're cheating, you're trying to tank us before it even, you're trying to hurt our tribe.
I didn't hear that part. That's funny.
Well,
yeah, I did.
You must have been so nervous, going through and oh no, I messed, my cup is broken. Are they gonna blame me for it?
I thought I was done for if we lost because I was not doing anything for the rest of that challenge. So I was trying to still keep going and also thinking in my head, here we go again. It's happening. We're going to lose. I'm going to be the first one out. So yeah, that was a tough challenge. I did also behind the scenes information. I don't know how true this is, but I had a lot of people telling me that everyone else could see out of their bus and they were just looking at the ground. And so that's why you see people dodging people in the footage.
I remember there was a lot of active rumors that Jackson could see straight out of his thing, and that's how Sangria did it so quickly. I have no idea if that's true or not, but I know there was a lot of people suggesting such a thing to be the case.
Yeah, I never knew if it was Jackson specifically, but also I didn't know people's names at that point, so I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, well, that's another thing is you came back after you had a gap year, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like to have a year where you kind of were you graduated, whatever, you're gone, now you're coming back and you don't know who a lot of the people are?
Yeah, I mean, I knew what I was getting into, so I knew that people would know each other. I really didn't know anything else though, so I didn't know that you all had been hanging out as each other's people for the past year. I really didn't know the extent or the depth of the relationships that had been created. And I would say even season 2, like I was in my second semester senior year during season 2. So I was involved in production, but I was not involved in like really hanging out with Survivor people that much. Like I would say from season 2, the only person I really saw outside of a Survivor context was Maggie, just because we'd like run into each other at the bars all the time. And so even the season 2 people that I was around for, I just like, you know, didn't really get that close to. So it was interesting, but yeah, I know my casting was supposed to be kind of a surprise. So I was told by production not to talk to people beforehand. And that lasted up until I think it somehow leaked that I was playing and I was back. And then I was able, did we talk before the game started?
I don't remember. I do remember hearing that you were going to play, but I don't remember if we like, spoke about it.
Okay, maybe we didn't. I couldn't remember when we had first texted, but so I was able to talk to Cooper and Emily, and those were the 2 people that I talked to like kind of before the game started, and that was maybe the day before. So I really didn't have any sort of pre-gaming things happening.
It was weird how like on one hand the producers were like, oh, like you can't talk about if you're cast and you're playing yada yada, but then they're like, oh, also though there's like a day 1 vote off and like giving us all those rumors and basically like encouraging people to pregame. It's like what? It's like all these mixed signals. Like, are we supposed to talk about it the game, or are we supposed to not? Like, I don't know.
That was dumb. The day one vote off was dumb.
It ended up being not good for like gameplay too, considering the first 2 boots. But I think it would have been fine or more fine if it was kind of explicitly told to everyone at a certain point that they could start pre-gaming. Like maybe, you know, okay, it's a week before the game, you can talk to people now or whatever.
There's not like a good way to do it because like in an ideal world you don't want like the pre-gaming that you don't have to like explain tons of stuff about the pre-gaming like in the show, you know, and like I think we sort of got away with not doing it, but then it still felt like we probably maybe could have explained a little bit more. It's like but if you tell people not to, some people are going to. Like I don't know. It's kind of an all in no lose situation. The ideal world is like you don't even tell people they're cast like the day of. But that's like completely unrealistic in terms of scheduling. So like, I don't really know what the right way to do it was, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like there's no easy way to do it. And it's not a situation where like in an LRG or like a 2-day game, if you hear someone's pre-gaming, you can just cut them from the cast. And that's not really the case with All Stars because you can't like. Did you guys have alternates? Were there like alternates if someone dropped out?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, kind of in the sense that if someone had dropped, I'm sure we would have like bumped somebody else in maybe. But
you don't really need them.
Levana did drop though, and that got Dylan on the cast regularly. So I guess that kind of happened because it was meant to be Dylan Levana as like a twist coming in at some point. It was going to be 10 and 10 guys, 10 girls. And so then when Levana dropped out, then we scrapped that and just added Dylan to the cast.
Why Dylan and Levana?
Added Camila instead.
Look, man, these were not decisions I was privy to. You know, this is like, don't ask me why these decisions were made. This was all happening like during Welcome Week. I'm sure I was on another planet. I was not paying any attention to this.
If anything, I mean, maybe this is just narcissistic, but I feel like if people were being brought in late, it should have been like me and Dylan, like a first boot and a last boot.
You know, that makes sense. There's really no reason why Dylan and Levana really have nothing to do with each other. It doesn't really make sense. But again, don't ask me. I don't know why that was what was going to happen. We talked about it in the casting podcast. Go back and watch that if you're curious more about that. People watching this.
Also, I forgot to ask. Like the first question we usually lead with is just like, you know, it's been 3 years since all this happened. Like, what have you been up to in that time, Sarah?
I now live in Atlanta. I'm working for the CDC, which I started for in 2021. So it's been 2 years. So it's not really in the beginning of COVID. I don't do anything with COVID, but that's been good. I like my job. Really the biggest update is I now have 3 cats and a dog, and I had no pets during Survivor. And I love my
getting pets left and right.
I know, it's really bad. We got 2 cats, a brother and sister, during like early quarantine of COVID. And then we got a dog like 6 months ago. And then we got another kitten because Brian's friend found him on the street. So we're just collecting animals. We live in a 1-bedroom apartment also. So it's kind of tight.
Brian, the fan, you know, one of the fan favorite NPCs of All Stars. Had a great starring moment in the in episode 2.
Yeah. I don't even think he watched it. I told him. I was like, you should watch it. The people love you.
He didn't watch his
Yeah,
cameo?
it was great.
Oh, he didn't. I'll make him watch it later, but I thought it was fun. It was a fun moment. I was really mad at him at the time. I don't think I was kind of joking in my confessional, but I was actually kind of mad.
I feel like it didn't have that much like negative impact.
It really
on you.
didn't. I'm sure it didn't. I think it was just
people thought it was funny.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think it was like I overheard later someone being like, who the fuck is that? Or like, why are they here? And so I was like, oh my God, they're going to think I'm like crazy. And I like made him come help me. And it was like one of the first nights too. So I just didn't want like a projection of an image that I was like playing really hard or something.
Yeah, it was very early in the game.
Yeah, it was like third day or something, right?
Yeah, I think it was the second week. But yeah, it was pretty early.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but okay, so I'm not gonna want to talk about my whole game, but I would like to start at the beginning, kind of talk about that first week, if that's okay.
Of course.
I feel like in the edit, which was honestly, it was like completely accurate, other than I feel like my mindset was like not fully explained. I probably didn't do a confessional on it, but I just want to make it clear, the entire week up until like 30 minutes before tribal council, I thought Bailey was the vote and Bailey was going home. So when I am trying to switch it to Andrew, I am actively trying to save Bailey and not Emily, because I didn't think it was Emily the whole time. So I feel like that is important to like the later stuff where Bailey's so mad that I wrote her name down, which I didn't. I wrote down Emily, but where she's so mad about me going against her in the early game, because I actively did not want it to be Bailey. And so when I'm arguing for Andrew and when I'm meeting with people and discussing Andrew, that was like a play to save Bailey. And also I think that explains where I wasn't like going that hard. Like I wasn't, spending hours trying to convince people, because I thought it was going to be Bailey, not Emily.
So what did you think when Nick was saying to you, though, that it's going to be Emily? Did you just think he was out of the loop?
Yeah, because Cooper and Andrew had said they were going to tell Nick that it was Emily, Nick that it was Emily. So I was telling Nick in that same thing. I was like, no, Nick, it's going to be Bailey. Like we were both telling people what we thought.
So yeah, Cooper and Andrew were like,
Cooper and Andrew really were like all over the place on that one. Unfortunately,
we met. Okay, this is going to sound like not a lot to you, Sam, but for me, meeting with people for hours was like not something I was really planning on doing. And didn't know that everyone would be doing it.
Like, it sounded like really like a whole hour at least, and like a whole another hour. I'm like, we weren't meeting that long. That's pretty extreme.
Yeah, it was extreme. It was like an extreme amount of time to spend with Cooper for him to like not be voting with us.
Yeah, you can't put anything past Cooper.
Yeah, obviously. I know that now. But at the time, I was really like, okay, this is the plan. Like, I've heard nothing other than what Nick is saying to like tell me that this is not what's happening. And I just thought that Nick was wrong.
Do you think there's like anything you could or like wish you had done in that original tribe to like save Emily, or like have the dynamics be different, I guess, than they were? Because it was tough, because like from my point of view of at least editing it, it was pretty clear that Cooper was fully with you and Emily until the like Tom stuff. And after that, it just kind of torched her. And that was not really anything that any of you guys like had control over. But like, I don't know. Emily is talking before about like if you and her had just teamed up with like Nick to begin with, like Nick and Bailey, and like not bothered with Cooper, like just kind of put Cooper and Andrew on the bottom instead.
I would have loved that. Emily would not do that. She told me, she is the one who said it was survivor suicide to go after Cooper. So I would have loved doing that. I felt better about Nick and Bailey than I did about, I don't know about Cooper actually, because that is the only person that I like knew before the game really. And Nick is saying in all his confessionals that he wanted to work with me, but I don't remember him telling me that, or at least I don't know if I believed it when he was saying it. So, but I definitely felt better about Bailey than I did about Andrew, and better about Nick than I did Nick better than Cooper and Andrew, I would say. So yeah, that would have been cool. Honestly, where I think the opportunity for a move is just making it Tom, or making it Bailey or someone that's not Tom the first week. Like looking
Yeah.
back, I feel like losing
Yeah.
Tom was pretty bad. But
I mean, I think I was talking to Tom about this actually the other day. We were just talking about the game, and he was saying that he was actually surprised watching it back how many people it seemed like did actually kind of want to work with him, and it just didn't get enough traction. But like Nick talked about it. Emily obviously wanted to work with Tom. Like I think Cooper also wasn't as opposed to doing it as you might have thought. So I think there's definitely a world where some combination of people come together to do that.
Yeah, I think it is possible. Tom had already been lying to people point, so that's tough. Like on a first vote.
Also, I'm assuming you just like wanted to get through that first vote.
Yeah,
like,
I was not gonna say anyone but Tom.
Yeah.
I would have been open, and I told this. It's not really in the meeting, but I did say I was open. Like you lead the way. If you want to do Bailey or someone else, we can do that. But I wasn't going to be the one throwing out anyone's name but Tom. And it seemed like I was already kind of aware that Bailey had a lot of connections on the cast. And so I was kind of worried that it would be a similar situation as going after Cooper, like that people would just be really mad if our tribe didn't vote off Tom, or when like if we voted off Cooper or Bailey, and then, there would be a rampage of revenge coming at us.
You don't want to like make enemies in the first week.
Yeah.
Like obviously.
And again, truly, I thought I was in a 4, so I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
I thought I had the numbers for the next week, but
no, and it's a tough situation too when Tom is definitely a wild card and you don't fully know if you can trust him because even though it seems like Emily wants to work with him, and then he also does kind of throw her under the bus, and it's like it was tough.
Well,
that move with Tom is also why Cooper doesn't believe Emily, like because Tom misspoke or something. I don't know.
Which is wild. I tried so hard. I watched that meeting of Cooper and Tom and Andrew talking probably like
try to find it
5 or 10 times because I wanted to find that exact clip where he's describing that, and I couldn't find it. But like, I don't know. I believe it's something Tom would have said.
Yeah. So
tough.
It's a lot of like random.
How do you feel about the week when Aaron went home? Like, do you have any regrets about the way that week played out, or do you feel like you and Nick should have gone a different way with that? Because that's something I wonder about a lot.
Yeah, I think so. The Tom vote and then the Aaron vote are like 2 places pre-merge where I feel like, we maybe had power to do something that we didn't. And I think it's also important to point out that me and Nick did not have the same game interests. Like we were working really closely together. So people think that we have the same game interests, I think, but we absolutely didn't. Like I wanted big names out. Nick didn't want, Nick was a big name too. So he didn't. And at the tribe swap or whatever, at that point in the game, I was maybe one of few people on the cast who was not talking to anyone outside of my tribe. Like I was working on building connections within my tribe, except for Sam. I think we probably texted because
we did a little bit,
most people. But aside from you, I was literally not hearing any information from any other people in the game. So I had to go off of really just what Nick was saying, and that's why we became so close in the game, is because we were, swapped, and he was the only person I had been building a connection with. And so I just, believed everything he told me about connections, and he wanted to keep Sam in the game. And so I was going along with that. I actually originally, when you see me talking to Jackson and Aaron in that episode, I was 100% on that side. Like I wanted to vote you out, Sam, and I was 100% going to go with them. It was after like talking with Nick and Bree for a long time that kind of flipped. And we see you and Bree talking and you kind of convincing Bree to flip. So it was like they both were convinced separately, and then they convinced me, I think, because I wanted to work with them. So I was going to, do what they had wanted to do. And I didn't fight hard because I thought that after everything that I was hearing, it was clear to me that more people wanted you out in the game than wanted Aaron out. And she like maybe had more connections or more friends, or more people were like more willing to work with her than you, even though watching it back, it's really, she was on the bottom the entire time. So that couldn't have been like super true. But
I think it's like
my head was.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a real like catch-22 situation where it's easy to say now that it would have been better to make the other move, but there's totally a scenario where like you vote off Sam or something, and then like you guys get to the next swap, and like if once Aaron is like connected with like Cooper and like Bailey specifically, like I feel like she would have ended up in a really good spot. So like I don't know. It's hard to say.
The only thing that I think would have been best for me in that scenario is if we did end up voting out Sam and it was like clear to Aaron and Jackson that I had been the one to kind of like pull back Nick and Bree. If I was able to do that, I think that Aaron probably would have been pretty loyal to me from
that is the one thing is if like I think that Aaron's one of those people where like if you are the one who saves her, like she's like undyingly loyal to you, you know?
Yeah.
So that is something, but I don't know if you guys like were as fully aware of that at the time as it might be easy to see now, you know?
I mean, I didn't know anything about season 2 was airing at this point. I didn't know anything about Aaron at all, other than again, like hearing about this Aaron Emily beef was the only context I had ever heard Aaron's name before this. And like just like I thought it was hilarious that you included that scene, or maybe this was in the bonus scenes, but
no, it was in it. It was in it. Your voting confessional?
Oh, no. I was flip-flopping, actually, to talk about something else of how little I knew about everyone. I literally said that Adam and Megan were dating. Or Adam and
like, that was so funny. I think it was Adam and Jesse.
Yeah, Adam and Jesse. 2 unrelated people, not either of the people in the relationship at all.
That was in the episode for a really, really long time. But then in like the pre-screenings, we'll call them, like people were just so confused by it, like didn't understand it at all. Like it was so I thought it was funny. It's like, oh, she clearly doesn't know what's going on. But then like people were just so confused by it that like my mom watched it and she was like, I thought these other 2 were dating. Like I thought Adam was gay. Like I'm really confused by this. I was like, okay, like this line doesn't play, even though it is pretty funny.
I think the issue was that my picture of Jackson looked so different from what Jackson actually looked like. My little magnet that I'd cut off from Facebook was like from 2014 or something. And so he has like long hair and I could not figure out who he was on the cast. So then I think I like conflated him and AJ with being the same person. And so that's what happened there. Fun. But yeah, it was tough. It was really tough learning everyone's name. And that was actually where the magnets came from, is I just needed to learn people's names and faces. So
yeah, it kind of on like one of the things I was thinking about watching it back as like you're kind of talking about like the Friends Alliance and like having an advantage and like the connections and stuff was like, I feel like one of the advantages that is really evident is just kind of what you're talking about. Like the longer you're around, the more you know people's faces, you know who they are, you know who they're friends with, you know who they like and who they dislike, you know how they play Survivor. Especially if you're a producer, like I feel like so much of Survivor is like trying to make predictions like what people will do. Like, oh, like if this move is made, like what will happen after that. And I feel like the more like background information you know, like the easier it is to predict what will happen. And like look, that is like a pretty big advantage, you know, of like being around longer and having more connections, because you just like have an idea of like what people will do. And like even like you're saying, like you know that it's actually Megan and Jackson are dating, you know, it's not AJ and Jesse, like, you know, like I'm even on that level.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. And it's like all the information that I'm getting is being fed to me through a Survivor lens. So I have no idea if what people are telling me is actually like the background of what's happening. Like someone could tell me, oh no, I'm not really that close with this person, when they're actually very close with them. So I have, you know, it was kind of just faith in reading people, I guess, to figure out what was happening. But it is funny. I mean, I loved my fans, but it was pretty funny how people, you know, really overestimated how much I knew in the game about what was happening, because I had like 1% of the information for most of the game. So, but yeah, I do want to say that going back to the Aaron vote, my voting confessional where I say it's revenge for Emily was really just leaning into the theme.
Which I like. I like that. That's good TV. I respect it.
Yeah, it did not have anything to do with that. It was purely based off the fake Kevin alliance and the like what I was hearing about people being closer to Aaron than they were to Sam. And Sam obviously had a target on his back at that point anyways, so he seemed like someone that people could rally around voting off in the future.
Yeah. I remember like after that tribal council, I was like so sold that like you, Nick, and Bree were like 100% with me. I was like, oh, like this is so sick. Like we're gonna have like a like really big merge alliance, and then like I feel like it was like kind of like a cold reception, like I don't know, maybe yeah. And then like after that, you know, Lucy's targeted, and I was like, okay, like actually, like it became clear that you and Nick were like you wanted to, or at least maybe I'm not. I guess I can't speak for you. Like from Nick in his interview, he was talking about like yeah, his whole idea was like he wanted to weaken people from different alliances and kind of like put himself up like higher in other people's lists by like taking out threats from different places.
Mhm.
Like, do you think that's kind of like how you were thinking about it, or like what was your mindset like after that vote? Like, it seemed like you'd really want to work with Jackson for sure.
Yes, I wanted to work with Jackson because I perceived him as being super on the outs, which was a correct perception for once. But so I wanted to work with like people who I thought did not have a lot of connections in the game, whether or not that was true. So I wanted to work with Jackson. I wanted to keep AJ in the game. So I wanted to, you know, if we were going to vote someone out from your side, I wanted it to be you or Lucy. And yeah, I wanted to just keep in the people. Jessie, I also wanted to work with if I was ever on a tribe with her. For some reason, I saw Bree as part of that too. Maybe just because I didn't hear about her talking to as many people as she was. So I didn't know how close she was with everyone. But yeah, that was like my rough game plan. Whereas Nick, I think, had the same idea in terms of weakening different alliances, but he was going after his ideal people were kind of opposite from mine.
Yeah. Like he really wanted to work with Cooper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to work with Cooper too. As much as I talk about wanting to screw him in my confessionals, like that was really just not something that was going to be a good game move for me, because he was one of very few people that I was talking to on a regular basis, and I was getting information from. Whether or not that information was true, it was at least a line of communication. So in the beginning, in the early game, it would have been great to get him out when I was still on the original Odawa tribe. But after I leave that tribe, yeah, I mean, even if Nick and I voted for Cooper at that tribal, I don't know how that would have. I feel like that still would have turned out bad for me at the merge. Like, I just don't think I had a long life in the game at merge either way. But I mean, we can talk about that vote and see how it would have gone.
Do you? The thing that I've always thought is that if you guys had voted out Leia instead of Jessie, it would have put you in a better position.
I mean, that would have been amazing, but they were just not going to do that. Nick was already extremely nervous about pissing off Cooper and Bailey, which I obviously was not, because Nick knows them better. It kind of goes back to what Sam was saying earlier about knowing, if you know people better, you'll know their reactions better. I had no idea that the reaction to voting out Jessie would be so severe. Like, I really thought it would be like, oh, that's a person I can't work with, but I still have 20 other people, or you know. So I didn't think it would be that big of a deal, and Nick knew it would be, which is why he was so nervous, why he wanted to tell Bailey and Cooper. He just had a lot more information or knew the situation more. And so if it had been Leia, I mean, I think all bridges with Bailey and with Cooper are completely burned.
I guess I just
other people.
Again, it's like a hindsight 2020 thing, because like to me, it's like the biggest thing that is harming a lot of people's games in the early part of the merge where we're at right now is like the existence of Leia, period, basically. That like without like Leia is really, even though Leia doesn't create this like majority alliance, I do feel like she was like the glue holding it all together, and that a lot of the people in that alliance don't trust each other at all, but because they knew that Leia was like not going to vote for any of them, that like kept them all feeling safe. And like I don't see Bailey and Sam like getting on the same page without Leia being around, you know. And maybe they would have if you guys had blindsided Leia, but I feel like also could just led to a lot more chaos in general.
Yeah, I mean, if we could have gotten that to happen, I mean, I think Andrew would have been down if he thought he could still work with Cooper in the future. But I think that's a good question. You'll have to, eventually ask Andrew if he would have been down to do Leia without telling Cooper, or if he thought that would ruin his bridge with.
I don't know, because he was willing to do it the very next week, and he's trying to get rid of her the next week.
Well,
so, like,
that was
doesn't have like
survival kind of thing. But
situations.
Yeah, you're right. So if we could have done that, I mean, again, Nick would have never done it. We don't need Nick technically if if Jackson votes for Leia too, and then we have a situation where potentially Cooper and Leia could go in the same week. That would have been really fun.
That would have been crazy.
Yeah.
I
Another
definitely
thing I've wondered about is that like seemingly this would never have happened, but like Kevin and Adam that week and you and like Jackson and Andrew actually have like very similar motives and motivations. And I feel like if there's some scenario where somehow you all could have gotten on the same page and come up with like, there's a way in which you do just take out two big power players. If you guys just like get on the same page and don't have plans that are like crossing each other, you know?
I actually feel like that is one of the big kind of mistakes I made in the game was, Sam, you kind of mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the Aaron vote and you thinking that we would be a tight group kind of moving forward. I feel like that might have been mostly from Bree and Nick. Like they both did a really good job of like using that vote to kind of solidify themselves with you and move forward wanting to work with you. I feel like I did not, because I was kind of like, I want to be seen as just kind of doing what they want to do and following Nick around at this point in the game. So I didn't really capitalize on that vote at all and kind of build a better relationship with you and AJ. And if I had done that week, then I think there's a lot more potential that we talk the next week at the double tribal.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely a regret of mine too. Like, because I feel like I remember our conversations that week. Like, I don't know, from what I remember at least, I don't know if they were really showing the episodes, but I felt like they were really, really good conversations. Like, we talked for a really long time at Espresso Royale, and like, yeah, I mean, we definitely had the same interest in like wanting Cooper out, and like I at least like wanted Bailey out also. But I just like didn't feel like I could find numbers to do it because like publicly people weren't saying like, oh, I want Cooper out. Like we were probably both telling each other like, oh yeah, like Cooper's so cool, I love Cooper. Like while thinking in our heads like, oh, I kind of want him out. So it's like unfortunate because like similar with AJ and Kevin's plan to get Cooper out. Like I'm like, yeah, there definitely could have been a scenario where those. I'm curious what would have happened if, like, let's say Jackson, he knows about this Cooper plan. What if he like goes to you and says like, hey, like I just heard about this plan from like Adam and Kevin about like whatever playing this idol for Lucy, getting out Cooper. Like I'm curious what you would have done in that scenario.
Oh my gosh, that is another big what if. So the plan was after the group of like however many of us it was met to decide where the votes were going at the double tribal. We had like maybe 15 minutes before tribal actually happened. And I texted Jackson like, hey, it's on, like, just vote Jesse. Like Jesse's going to go. And he was like, he said something like, oh, okay. Or like didn't sound very enthusiastic and said, do I have to vote Jesse? Something to those lines. And I was like, what the fuck, Jackson? Yes, you have to vote Jesse. Like, vote Jesse. Because I had obviously no idea about this other plan and that he didn't actually have to vote Jesse. So I think in that conversation, if we had made a phone call instead of texting or like had some follow-up to that text conversation of me asking, why are you hesitant to do this? Then that plan might have come out and we could have figured out where all the votes were.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like, you guys theoretically would have had all the information at that point, like, and could have basically figured out where all the votes were going.
At that point, I think we could have easily had, well, no, he would have had to vote for Cooper. Yeah. I was thinking maybe we could have had Jackson vote for Leia in that situation and have it be like a 1-1 on Cooper.
It would be kind of funny, like a tie between Cooper and Leia, and everyone has to decide which one they're going to.
That would be hilarious. But that scenario, it would be 1-1-1, right? So Jackson would still go home.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So could have done that. And if I flipped my vote and Jackson did, then Jackson would have went home. So, but yeah, I mean, us talking beforehand is definitely a huge what if, and I definitely think we would have figured it out in like not very much time. Like I think we actually in the 15 minutes had the time to do it.
Oh yeah. I never thought of this, but yeah, I've always thought Jackson should have told you guys.
I don't know why he didn't. Maybe there wasn't enough time. He was too busy trying to decipher like why Adam was giving him a fake idol that he was like got distracted. I don't know.
Yeah, but there was a moment where I wasn't with Bailey or Cooper. They might have just been in the bathroom though, but I remember there being a moment where it was just me, Nick, and Andrew. And like that would have been a time I think where I could have called Jackson just to figure out what's happening. But
I think the onus is more on him to have reached out to you though, because from your perspective, like the plan is just like Jackson's just gonna vote where you tell him, you know? Like, there's no reason for you to really suspect there's this other thing going on.
He was just so confused what those guys were doing, which, like, in his defense, like
it was pretty confusing.
It was confusing.
Something that was really irritating about that week, though, was I feel like the narrative started before anything happened with Jesse, that I was like this conniving player who would like screw people over. And I have no idea where that came from. Like, I did nothing.
That's season 2.5. That's 100% like all the way back. Like, that reputation comes from like, wasn't it like you and Bree and whatever, like sitting. What was that? What was that like blindside? Do you remember this?
Yeah, she like blindsided Katie when Katie was like having drinks with her.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. I feel like that did contribute to it, honestly. Dude, sometimes no one does these things just like appear out of thin air, and like once they start being said, it's just like treated as like fact, you know?
But like,
that's definitely what I remember.
He was having a conversation with Jackson in the episode about how much of a conniving player I was.
That's funny.
I think it's like a compliment to a degree.
Yeah.
You know? Like, how much did people know about your game on Survivor Buffalo and stuff? Like, how did you come very close?
I don't think anything. Well, her reasoning was, she does those LRGs with Emily, so we must play the same way because we, you know, which obviously you have all sorts of players in all sorts of games. But yeah, that 2.5 is fair. I hadn't thought of that as a reason, but I was quite annoyed that people were calling me conniving to Jackson, who was known as the most conniving player.
I think Jackson is actually not nearly as conniving as people make him out to be. In terms of like the fake idols and all that stuff, yeah, but he plays pretty straightforwardly. Like, when has he ever just like backstabbed somebody? But like him and Dale, I guess they blindsided Lisa, but like
I mean, they lied to Matthew like every single week.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but the whole game was lying to Matthew. Like, he stuck with that main alliance the whole time and didn't really do anything particularly schemy.
That's true.
But he does talk that way. He gives off conniving, you know?
Yeah, well, I was thinking, like, do I give off conniving when I'm talking to people? Like, I must in some sense. But I do think that's also, like, I don't remember who was talking about this or if it was in the episode. Maybe it was Leia. But I did not know the social courtesy of asking people about their lives before strategizing with them. So I never did that. I couldn't tell you what anyone was majoring in. Like, that was obviously a huge flaw in my game. I like really was, you know, wanting to just talk about the game, which was I guess didn't endear me to people that much. But
I mean, you and Jackson were like, I feel like it makes sense why you two vibe, because you're very much in the same like wavelength as far as that goes.
Yeah, I feel like I was also just busy. Like, I was in grad school at the time, and I had like literally 3 jobs that I was doing too, and so I did not have a lot of time. And so I wanted my meetings to be like kind of to the point, and that could have been affected by the first week of like, I'm not doing this every week.
I'm not having like 2 hours of fake conversations with like Cooper like every time.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was I wish I did that better. And yeah, that was maybe where my conniving label came from too.
You definitely came up as like very strategic, and like every conversation I had with you, at least, I'm like, all right, like Sarah like really knows what she's talking about. Like, she just like, you just came off as like you really knew the game. You love the game and then the game theory, and it's like you just came off as very strategic, and especially being associated with Nick. Like, I feel like I at least viewed your pair just like, okay, like ultra strategic, ultra like they love the game, they like know what they're doing, just like that, like very scary kind of duo. Like, that's just what came off to me. And then like seeing how Nick did in season 2, like you in 2.5, I'm like, okay, like they're like a very strategic pair.
Yeah, well, thank you. I take that as a compliment. But that was why I like talking to Nick so much about the game, because I feel like we would talk for hours like over text about like all the different decisions. But yeah, one other thing about that double tribal that I don't think was super clear in the episode was that I didn't know that Bailey and Cooper were pushing for me. Maybe it was in the episode. I don't know.
I feel like you kind of did. It was definitely in it that you like. I feel like Nick said this also though afterwards, that he didn't know how hard it was being pushed until he watched it, you know?
Yeah. All I knew was that Nick told me that Bailey had called him and said she was considering voting for me. So I didn't know that Cooper and Bailey, that was their ideal scenario, or like that they had wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
I just knew that they were willing for it to be me. And it was kind of pitched to me as like, oh, like Leia really wants this, or like Leia's pushing hard for you and they considered it, but they're not doing it. Or Bailey considered it and she's not doing it, or something to that effect. So I only found out later. I think I found out a little bit in the game that maybe they wanted it to be me more than they had originally put out, but like really just watching the episode.
Nick said he like did not really realize till watching it like how much they want. Like he was like, I didn't know Cooper was there when Bailey called me. Like I didn't know a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild to hear.
Yeah. So when I am my thought process when I am wanting the vote to be Jesse was not so much that I wanted to save Jackson, although I did want to work with him. It was more that I knew, which didn't end up happening, but I knew I was getting a vote, at least one, from Lucy. And we also knew that Lucy or AJ or you had an idol that could very possibly be played for Lucy. And everyone was telling me, no way they play an idol, but like they're not the ones risking it being them if there is an idol played. So my motivation for that was, 90%. I thought I was going to go home if an idol was played. So I wanted votes on someone else. Over, wanting to save Jackson. So I still viewed that tribal council as a win, honestly, like even though Jackson left, because we got Jesse out, who was a number for like the other side or whatever. So I was still happy with it.
Well, also like it definitely made sense like of your overall plan of like Odawa plus Megan and Jackson at the merge, like having numbers, which is funny how Bailey kind of like is like, well, like this plan's like good for everybody except for me. Then like next week she's like, actually no, like this is great. Like let's do this alliance for real.
Yeah, that was funny. I do think a lot of that was, and actually Ian, I mean, you see everyone's confessional, so you'll know if this is true, but I had always kind of thought that Andrew not going at that tribal council where Lucy went was actually bad for my game, because I thought that Bailey would have stuck to the 7, because it was originally 7 if Andrew was gone, but she was afraid of me, Nick, and Andrew all like voting against her together.
So I think that it's kind of hard to say for sure, because like there's all these different factors that go into it, and like if Adam pitches this to Bailey, like maybe she still flips. But I definitely think that especially the Lucy, Sam, and Adam as this like trio of like evil, for want of a better word, or like this group of people that was very threatening and that people didn't want to have around long in the game. I do feel like that would have kept like you guys together potentially longer, at least for a vote. I think there's really no way that Bailey flips to that group, like if Lucy's still in the game and all 3 of them are there. I just feel like that was like seen as like the strongest alliance in the game. They've been working there the whole game. And so I really do think that at least one of them would have gone before anything else would have happened. But it's it's really impossible to say for 100% sure, but I kind of agree with you. I do think that and there was definitely like the Nick, Sarah, and Andrew when you guys weren't really like a tight 3 at all, and like
I still didn't really like Andrew. I'm sure
really
he's a
never
great
saw
person,
himself.
I was
as,
trying to get Andrew out like every like a bunch of different times.
Yeah. So
he also like never really saw himself as like with you guys either, really. So like
that was also, I mean, similar to the Kevin thing, but probably more real than the Kevin thing was. But I mean, we all know that perception matters more than reality of who people are working with. And after the fact, looking back, I definitely should have been working closer with Andrew if everyone thought we were anyways. Then you might as well be working with that person, or else you have the worst of both worlds if you're not working with them and people think you are. So
do you think there's anything at the merge or on that you like wish you had done differently, or you think would have kept you in the game longer? Or not
merge
really?
On is hard.
I've always wondered why you guys don't go to Bailey with these text messages. Like, why is it never presented to Bailey like face to face? Like, oh, here's these messages. Here's proof this is happening. My
and
understanding.
I wish I remembered any of that. I do
Okay.
not remember the text messages. I remember at the time being confused about what was happening with Kevin and the text messages. I never saw them, so I don't know. Like,
From watching all the footage, my understanding of it was that, like, honestly, in the show, it made it look more like it was a thing that was happening. But, like, in real life, it seemed like you, Andrew, and Megan were all just totally fine with Kevin getting voted out because you guys also didn't trust him at all, and that it was borderline a unanimous vote, and everyone was just like, all right, Kevin wants to do some crazy thing, we'll, like, let him do it. But none of you guys were that invested in it, is the sense I got, at least.
I wouldn't say I was okay with Kevin going, because Kevin was someone that I really wanted to work with. But I was okay with, I mean, how the vote split happened, like, as soon as we knew where everyone was voting, it was impossible, and we had to vote for Kevin anyways. So that was kind of why we voted for Kevin, I think. And I'm sure Andrew was okay with voting for Kevin. Megan might have been, but I feel like I really didn't want to vote for Kevin there. But I was not that invested in his plan, because I thought it was, like, never going to happen, basically. I thought his plan, the way it was explained to me, because I don't think Kevin ever told me what his plan was, like, to me. I heard it, like, through the grapevine, and it sounded crazy when I heard it. So
Yeah.
Okay.
There was also, like, a Survivor 42-esque, or maybe it was 43, I don't know, where everyone, like, if you tried to switch things up, like, that got you out, basically. Like, that was what it was presented to me. It was, like, kind of this mob mentality of, like, oh, if you're trying to convince us to do things, or you're trying to be crazy or lie to people, then we're going to immediately vote you out. And so I remember a phone call with Bailey when she was like, as long as you don't do anything this week, like, you'll be fine. Like, Kevin got himself voted out because he was crazy. Like, so I was, like, literally scared which, looking back, like, obviously,
I don't think it's even that accurate looking back. Like, I think that Cooper pushed the vote onto Kevin before any of that even happened, really. But I can see how people are saying that, I guess, you know.
That's, I think the right thing to say in that scenario when you're trying to keep people
Bailey's
on the bottom. But
that's what Aaron said to my face in, like, the first week.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so
don't
you
change
never
things
like
up, or else, you know.
So how do you feel watching it all back with, like, the obviously, like, the Leia's list of it all, and, like, the friendship alliances and all this kind of stuff, you know?
I mean, I still stand by everything I said at that tribal. Like, I think Survivor's obviously a complicated game, and there was more going on than the friendship thing, but there's many instances in the game that I can point to where if prior friendships hadn't been there, then there's no way a certain move, like, would have been made. And so it just had such a huge impact on the game, which, again, is understandable. It's an all-star season where people have been hanging out forever. But just because it's understandable and could be the right move for those people doesn't mean it's not, like, frustrating, because it feels like you have no control over it, even whether or not that's actually the case. So
what are some of those moves that you think were, like, really impacted by friendship?
I think if Bree and you don't have a prior relationship, then you're voted out the week that Aaron goes. So that's one. I think Bailey doesn't flip back to you guys if there's not prior relationships. But that is also complicated to say, because if there weren't prior relationships, then there wouldn't be, like, the girls' alliance that formed and everything. So, I mean, it just has such a big impact on the game, because when you don't know, like, if you look at other seasons, not an all-star season, people aren't really talking to other tribes until they're on them. So it just has such a, like, it's not even possible to put into words how, like, big of an impact prior relationships have.
I feel like I feel like it's interesting because the one thing about it is that, like, most of them weren't. I guess it's interesting because I've heard you and Jackson both say you, like, knew these relationships existed but didn't understand, like, the depth of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, like, going into it, it felt like there was a lot of, like, it wasn't like a secret that Cooper and Leia were friends, you know? Versus, like, season 1 where, like, Tarowski and Thal are, like, secret roommates, or Cooper and Leia, like, it's not known that they're friends. So I was like, it's mostly, for the most part, it felt like it was out in the open. But that, like, I don't know if that,
I mean, for example, of how, like, it seems like information is out there when it's actually not. I didn't find out that Jackson and Megan for real were the ones dating until I was speaking to Jackson at the double tribal, which is like weeks after that
Yeah,
information.
Andrew also has said that too.
Oh yeah, everyone's like saying that me and Megan are dating, so they're like mad about it. And I was like, you and who? Who's dating? Like, what's happening? And he was also like, oh yeah, I hit a bunch of fake idols. And I was like, oh my gosh, fake idols. Like, I didn't know any of this information that was of what was happening on other tribes. Which I also take responsibility for. Like, I could have been like, hey, is anyone dating? Or like ask, I don't know what I would have done. But I could have just been in more conversations.
I do feel like a lot of the Jackson and Megan and like fake idol stuff and a lot of that stuff like wasn't really being treated as that big of a deal by a lot of people is the actual truth behind it. Like, because they never ended up on the same tribe, I feel like it just wasn't something that was always being discussed that much. Like Kevin flipping on Will was like the big deal for like a while, you know, in terms of like that tribe.
Like, I didn't know that happened. Like, I knew Will got voted out, obviously, but I was like, oh great, Will went home. Like, I didn't know what was happening behind that vote. So yeah, I mean, it was tough. I do think friendship played a big role, but I don't think anyone is I think you do whatever's best for your game. And for a lot of people, working with their friends was best for their game. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people. And like at this, I do agree, like, and I'm fully clear that like my job for the last 2 weeks was to try to flip people. And I didn't, I couldn't do that. And that's also on me. Like, I could have said different things. And I think if I had, asked for more information or tried to like more fully understand what was happening in the 7, then it's possible that I could have like known different people to go to. Like Emily B to me never mentioned flipping or like never seriously considered it. But then in her confessionals, she is. So I clearly just wasn't someone that she felt comfortable sharing that with or, whatever the case was. And I wouldn't have been going to Bree. Like Bree, I thought would flip because she was the only one telling me that she was considering flipping.
She was like in a great spot.
She was in a great position, like in her. Like I didn't know anything about that alliance of women. So
I think it's tough because that alliance was so on the DL at this point in time that like that was really I think that like it's watching it back now, it's easier to see how like both from the friendship angle and the strategic angle, it makes sense for some of these people to be doing what they're doing versus at the time. It's like, well, why is like Brief and like, Emily B feel so comfortable? Well, it's because they think they're in this like Final Four that like there's been no evidence to suggest that.
Yeah, but Emily B should have known she couldn't beat anyone in that Final Four.
Well, that's a different question.
Well, it should have been she can be comfortable, but if she wants to win, then she has to flip, which I think I was nervous to say. I don't even know if I told that to her.
That's what Kevin said to her.
Yeah.
But people don't really like to hear that. Like, so you got to be like very careful if you're going to use that as like a thing.
Megan did the same thing to
lose to everyone, so you got to do something. But
yeah,
I think that the people, I just went to the wrong people, and Bree did a great. Like, I honestly think that was such a good move of Bree to entertain me for so long, because even though she said in her confessional it maybe it like made people more suspicious of her, I wasted all of my time on Bree when she was never actually considering flipping. So I could have used that time to go to other people and
like I wonder if because Cooper really wanted to flip that week that you went home. So like he's like looking for anybody who's willing to do it. So I wonder if you had sent him to someone other than Bree, could he have caught like
no one other than Bree gave me anything.
Like if Cooper and Emily B talk and realize they both want to flip, does something happen? Versus Cooper and Bree talking and Bree being like, actually, I don't want to flip at all, Yeah. I wonder if that would have happened, but I don't know. It is what it is.
I think it's totally possible that it might have. I think what I was hearing from people, AJ in particular, was like, I want you here and I want to flip next week. Like he didn't want to flip that week. They wanted to flip next week. And so I think, if I could have made it one more week.
I know. It's also a tough situation for you because I don't know how, because you really weren't going home until very near the end. Like everybody wanted Andrew out. So I understand why like you might have felt like you could just wait it out one more round,
Yeah, for sure. And I did feel that way.
Which I don't think you had the wrong read on that. I think the vast majority of people really only Cooper and Bailey didn't want it to be Andrew.
Yeah. So my conversations with Emily and AJ were like plans for the next week, basically, more than convincing them to flip this week.
I wondered if like, there'd been like these texts that like, that whole plan the previous week where I basically was saying like, oh, like I don't trust Bailey. Like I kind of want Bailey out. Like I wondered if y'all ever considered like exploiting that. I mean, I guess like you could kind of tried it that previous week, but like if there had been a plan to like vote off like Bailey or Cooper, I would have jumped on it in an instant. But I was too afraid to suggest it because like when I kind of like did my toe in the water the previous week to suggest that, like I instantly got thrown under the bus like directly to Bailey. Because I was like, that's something I definitely would have wanted. I was like itching for an opportunity, but I was like afraid to talk about it because like I didn't know who was receptive to it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that, so I should have talked to you too that week, I guess. It genuinely, like, I did not understand really what had happened the previous week. I remember literally thinking that Kevin had faked screenshots. Like, I don't know how. I didn't like. I don't know how.
At all.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know what was happening in my mind that week. I did not know what had happened really the previous week.
See, I never understood that either because I assumed it was like this really coordinated plan where like all of you had seen these screenshots and we're like, okay, we're gonna like throw Sam under the bus to Bailey and try to get Sam out and like get Bailey and Emily to flip, like yada yada. Like, but it sounds like you hadn't even like seen the text or really like Kevin just kind of did his own thing, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know why, because Megan was the one who I don't know why she didn't tell me because we met for a really long time trying to figure out like where we should try to flip people. And I don't remember her telling me anything about what actually happened.
You guys will have to ask Megan eventually. My impression from her confessionals, which I like kind of cut out because it would have made it less dramatic, is basically her saying like, I just gave this to Kevin kind of like you give a kid candy. Like, I'm just going to let him do it. Like, if it works out, sure. But like, I don't want to be blamed for all this happening. And I'm fine with Kevin. And like Cooper was telling her, it's definitely going to be Kevin. So like, she like didn't want to risk it blowing up in her face by her being the one to push it all, was the sense I got from her. So she like had this info, wanted to try to use it, but didn't want to like spearhead it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what she thinks though eventually, but that's my understanding, at least from the videos.
Yeah, I mean, even if I had that information, I didn't have a relationship with Bailey at that point where I could have like told her anything that she would that she would believe.
Yeah, I don't think you and Bailey had a working relationship at this point.
We didn't. Literally everything, our relationship, which I felt like had been very good up until the Jesse vote, just was completely blown up at the Jesse vote. Like, just never. I mean, it was obvious it was obvious immediately during and after the tribal that Bailey was never gonna forgive this, never gonna forget it. Like, it was extremely, extremely dramatic in a way that I had never seen before and didn't anticipate. So not just from Bailey, from a lot of people. So I clearly misread that situation. And actually, like, that was the flip for me. Like I say in my confessional that I didn't have as much fun as I think I was going, as I thought I was going to playing Survivor. And that week was definitely the flip for me. Like, I was having fun up until that point. And at that point, like, I literally think I have a confessional where I wanted to quit because it was just not worth causing literal pain to people. And like all of these emotions, I did not want to emotionally take on any of it. Yeah. And it wasn't fun to be in those situations. So
I think like half the cast talks about quitting that week.
Yeah, I mean,
the last week that you were in the game, like that week.
No, the double tribal week.
After the double tribal.
That's why, like the week of the the week of the 3-person tribal, like between the double tribal and that tribal, there was a lot of people who were like, "This, like maybe I should just quit. Maybe it should just be over." Like it was a stressful time for everybody.
And that's really where my perception of the game really changed too. And like, I really was like, all right, this is all about prior relationships and people just want to see their friends win because of what Leia was saying at that meeting of 10 people. This wasn't in the episode, but at the meeting, or maybe it was.
It was in the next episode. It was in episode 7. I'm pretty sure.
Where she's like telling off everyone who's sitting there that they're like voting off their friend and they shouldn't be voting Lucy. And like, I'm literally sitting there as the other vote. Everyone knows that I'm the other vote. And I'm just, you know, sitting there listening to this. Like, oh, it's fine to be excited if you're voting out Sarah, but you guys are all bad people for voting out Lucy. Threatening our lives if Cooper went home the night at the double tribal.
He was being crazy.
Yeah, and obviously that was all coming from Leia, but I didn't know that it was all coming from Leia. So I'm like, oh my God, this is the perception. Like this is what's
Yeah.
happening in the game. And that's when it became less fun for me, I think, and why you see me talking more about friendship in the future after that. Because I don't even really think that I complain about it too much before that point.
Makes sense. I feel like from my perspective, like it's like watching it back, I can definitely see a lot more, even just like hearing your perspective now, like understand a lot more of what you were saying, because at the time I just didn't get it, because I was like, I wanted Cooper out and Bailey out, and I tried to get them out all these times. Like, I don't care about the friendship stuff. I just want to win.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I didn't actually have that many conversations with you to where like, you know, how would you even really known that? Like even that whole thing we just talked about with like the text and like me wanting Bailey out, like I should have just went to, if I really wanted that to happen, I should have just went to you about it instead of like assuming you would know. And like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, and the stuff too, where you're saying like just how much the relationships impacted like the perception of the game and like who wanted to work with who and like who trusted who and things like that. Like, I feel like in the moment it's easy to be defensive. Like what? Like, I feel like I'm playing the game. Like, I don't think this is rigged. Like all these things have happened, but is this like just very in the moment where it's like, I feel like watching it back, I can see a lot more of the things that you're saying, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And you were one of like the few people, I think, who were in, you know, really tight with a lot of people who were trying to vote out, you know, other people who were in with a lot of people. Like, I don't think a lot of people were trying to do that. Which is why it doesn't really happen. But like your allies for those votes are people more on the outs. You're not working with, you know, Bailey to get out Cooper, Leia to get out Bree or whatever, you know, any of the people in more of that group. And yeah, it's just like, I do get it too. And I don't want to like down value like AJ flipping Bailey or like you flipping Bree in these different moments. I just think the friendship and previous factor is so like such a big part of that as well as along with the strategy. Like you guys are saying the right things and you have like a big boost from those friendships. Like Bree Bree could have had a million strategic reasons to like want to side with you that week. But what she said in her confessional was that she wanted to play with her friends and you guys had better vibes. Like, why isn't she playing with people that she likes about you and Lucy? So it just, you know, not that she hopefully disliked me or Aaron or Jackson, just that, you know, she had established relationships with you guys and knew she had fun with you guys and would have a good time playing. So, and
also like the previous relationships, I feel like it's like built-in trust before you even start. Whereas if you don't have that, you have to like earn the trust over time, and it's like more difficult. And I feel like if people are just inclined to like give the benefit of the doubt people they already know and just like trust them inherently, you know.
For sure.
Versus, like you kind of had to start from like a fresh slate and like build trust with these people you didn't know that well, which is just like more difficult.
I mean, to a degree, I feel like you did a decent-ish job of like lasting pretty long for knowing like almost like you probably knew the least people of anybody in the cast coming into it, and you made it pretty far even regardless of that. So I feel like you did do a good job for a while in terms of like. I mean, like, it's not like you and Nick were like best buds before the season or anything like that. Or like,
no, I hadn't talked to Nick in at least. Yeah. Oh, wait, no, I always forget about 2.5. So I was talking to Nick during 2.5, but
that was still a year before All Stars.
Yeah, that was the last time I had spoken to really anyone.
Let me ask you this. What was the most like surprising thing to you watching it back, like in the editing? Just, I don't know, was there anything about like watching the show that was like different than how you expected it to be, or like the way you came off or somebody else came off, like in their confessionals or anything that like really surprised you watching it back?
I mean, move-wise, Bailey and Cooper wanting to vote for me was the biggest surprise for sure that I didn't know about. Edit-wise, I mean, people are like so funny and so fun to watch. I really liked watching everyone in a way where like I didn't always enjoy my conversations with everyone when I was in the game. But watching them back, I'm like, oh, all these people are great. I feel like Bailey's confessionals are great, and I feel like I understand a lot more about her game and like why she was doing things that she was doing after watching the season. Yeah. I don't know about surprising about edits. I mean, I was surprised that I had so many fans. It did seem like the women had a leg up in the fan department, though. I don't know. I don't know why they hate all of men. It's pretty funny. But I was, yeah, I've been honestly blown away by the reaction and the amount of people that watch the episodes. Like, I really had no idea that like hundreds, let alone thousands of people would watch these. So that was like super surprising. And then, oh my gosh, yeah, watching that whole plan to get Cooper out of the double tribal go down on like yours and AJ's and Kevin's side was hilarious too. I didn't really know that Kevin had a relationship with as many people as he did. Like, he was really meeting up with like a lot of people throughout. So that was surprising too. I don't know. Ian, so many things were surprising. I did not know a lot about what happened.
How did you feel with the Magic School Bus as your theme song? People keep asking this in the threads.
I loved it. I wouldn't have recognized it as that because it's been so long. But when people mention that it was Magic School Bus, I love it. I hope I give Miss Frizzle vibes. I like her.
Here's a question I've always wondered is like, at what point would you have considered flipping on that Alliance of 7? Because Bailey kind of assumes like, oh, like I need to do like Nick and Sarah could flip on any moment. Like I need to flip first. Like, what was your plan of as far as like when you were going to flip?
So Nick and I don't believe ever talked about flipping. Because again, we had different motivations. Like, he did not want to work with people that I wanted to work with in the long term. So I can't say for sure what his thought on this is. But I would have definitely wanted to wait at least 2 votes and then potentially flip with, I mean, again, I underestimated relationships so much. I just assume people are going to act in their best interest to win all the time. So my idea was that I was going to pull in Emily B and AJ to me, Kevin, Megan, and Andrew. Like, just the weirdest group of people that probably would have never worked together.
Been a great
but
group
all
of people,
had, like,
though.
yeah,
Alliance.
Yeah, I know. It would have been great. I thought it would have given us all the best chance to win. Nick, I don't know. It's hard to remember back, like thinking about numbers and everything when I would have actually flipped. But I remember not knowing whether Nick would be included in that, like depending on where the numbers were and everything, because eventually, obviously, I was going to have to vote out Nick, and I didn't want to do it at the very last minute. But my final 3 was me, Kevin, and Megan.
Nice.
At merge.
That would have been like the fan favorite, like that's the way the season ended. Like the people with best season ever of all time by far.
I'm pretty sure I said it to Kevin before he got voted out, but I think he thought I was like joking because that was our first meeting. But yeah, I mean, I think like after the double tribal had happened, I really like the friendship thing became like really blown up in my mind to the point where I was like, I'm not winning against anyone that has any connections. Like, I'm losing to literally everyone except for Megan, Kevin, Emily B, maybe. But
do you think that's still true? Like, let's say it's like a final 3 of like you, Bailey, and Cooper. Like, do you think you're automatically losing?
Yeah, I think I'm automatically losing. I don't know. I assume Bailey would win in that scenario, but I don't know. I think the perception, I didn't realize people thought she was quite as erratic as people thought. I
remember always thinking that like you would become a giant threat right near the end because just being able to say the story of like first boot to finalist is like such a winning story. And I feel like there's a decent number of people on this jury who like are into a story, but I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't know people that well still, I guess. I was like, they're going to vote for their friends. They hate me. I also was inflating Bailey's perception of me versus other people because I had talked to her so much in the game. So when Bailey had like flipped her perception of me to be like someone that no one could ever work with, I kind of assumed that's what more people than just her thought.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's really difficult to predict like what people will value at the end because I remember I thought at the time like, oh, like there's not a chance that like any friend will win against any of the non-friends, because like the whole jury will basically like hate the entire majority alliance, and like they're all going to get like shit on at final tribal. So like I was thinking the opposite thing, like, oh, like if it's Sarah, Cooper, whatever, Bailey, Sarah's going to get all the votes because it's like, oh, it's more impressive that you made it there, and people are like mad about the friends alliance. So like it's funny how we both have the opposite perception. Like,
well,
know,
I think I should retract my statement a little bit. I guess I'm thinking pre the flip, like when Bailey flipped, like kind of in that not even a vote period of time.
It was a long period. It felt like an entire like week at least. Like,
it was. Was it over a break? Oh no, it was over Halloween and fall break maybe.
Yeah,
no, I don't know.
I think I want to say there was a break in there somewhere, because like it felt like
fall break was earlier, but there was a decent amount of time, and it wasn't just that. It was also that the 3-person tribal had happened. So it was like a pretty long time since it felt like there was like at least 2 full weeks between the double tribal and like the next thing happening. So like, even though that original Bailey alliance like doesn't stick together, it felt like a flip like to everybody in the game, because it had been an alliance that was being talked about as being together for like a decent number of days, you know, like at least a week and a half of like real time. It was like, this is what is happening. There's going to be this 8-person alliance, 7-person alliance, whatever, you know.
The Bailey's 8 alliance lasted like half of a current CBS Survivor season.
Yeah, honestly, it did. Like it lasts like 13, 14 days. Yeah.
So when you get to like halfway through Survivor 43, be like, okay, that's how long Bailey's 8 lasted.
Yeah, I love that. Also, can I just I don't know if I can share this in a way that like you guys can see it. Basically, it's a screenshot of the 7-person alliance. And I guess I set up the group chat and I said, hi, everyone. And then Cooper says, as a joke, wait, we're voting together, ? And then I say, you probably won't, frowny face, as a joke, because he's like known for flipping so much. And then he says, that's just asking for this to blow up this week. And then I say, just kidding.
And that's the moment Cooper decided to flip. That right there.
Well, Cooper didn't want to do it. If you watch it back, Cooper didn't want to do it, but
oh my God, that's the other thing. This was the day after Halloween when I was meeting with Cooper, and I don't know if that was the day of tribal, but I was so violently hungover that I could not comprehend what was happening in my conversation with Cooper. Like, if I had been not like that in a good condition, I genuinely feel like I would have sussed out the flip, because all of the signs were there and it was so obvious what was happening. And I was just like, my brain was not functioning in my conversation with Cooper. It was awful.
In the episode, it seems like you really were like, you could tell the vibes were off. Like you were basically like, oh, like I feel like there's no chance that this actually goes as planned.
Yeah. The thing is, I thought that not going as planned would be them voting out Kevin. And I don't remember why I thought that, because that seems dumb to flip for no reason. But it was kind of like, okay, they're going to do what I did for the Jesse vote. Like they're going to vote in their best interest, not against me, just get someone out that they don't want to work with.
Yeah. That was kind of like the fake plan, I guess, that we were like tossing out to everybody. Like, can we like, before the flip even happened, me and Adam were like, that was our strategy. Like, let's just try and get people to somehow vote for Kevin.
Yeah, there you go. So I was like, all right, they're going to vote for like, if this doesn't work, they'll probably just vote for Kevin. And it's fine, because I didn't think it was going to be like a coordinated flip. Like I thought like Emily B would switch her vote, and then like maybe Bailey would. Like I didn't think all 3 of them would kind of come together and decide to go to the other side.
Well, I guess it wasn't also really known that like Emily B and Cooper had become close at that point. You know, I don't feel like that was super
I didn't know that at all.
It's kind of random how that happened. But was it through Bailey mostly?
Basically, yeah.
And Bailey was like at the height of power here, where she has like a girls' alliance, like a trio with Cooper and Emily that's like splitting between 2 alliances that she made.
Yeah, Bailey was like kind of in control the whole game at this point.
Totally.
Yeah, not gonna lie.
Totally. She was killing it. Yeah, and I feel like there was like, I don't know, a little imposter syndrome going on, maybe, of like her not really believing that she was in control when she definitely was in control the whole time. So I don't know. She was playing, in my opinion, she was playing great up until that point. Like I think the flip was good for Bailey from my knowledge at the time. And I thought, yeah, I don't know. Like, I remember thinking, fuck, like, I didn't think they would do that, but they did. And I don't remember thinking it was a bad move for their games to flip. I was just annoyed by the flip and the like whole like friendship aspect of it.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It sucks to be the majority, then have people flip and work with their friends, and then now you're in the bottom. Like, this is.
I mean, I wonder if we had targeted anyone but you, Sam, if it would have been the same situation.
I don't really think it had to do with like me
it
versus
doesn't.
Adam, because
I think that they would have flipped no matter what. It was not really about saving Sam or Adam. It was about like Bailey and Emily's paranoia of like, well, Bailey and Emily wanted to work with Leia and Bree more than any. That's the main reason why I think that Leia potentially not being there would have changed it, because like Bailey and Emily B didn't want to flip to work with Adam and Sam. Really, they wanted to work with Leia and Bree. So like, I don't think that Sam and Adam had all that much. Adam obviously like pitches it, and like he did a great job in like saying the right things to Bailey to get it to happen. But I feel like it wasn't so much like a let's save Sam as it was like, oh, I really want Bailey would just want to get back at like you and Nick and Andrew for sure.
Well, I think she was paranoid too that like, oh, if I don't flip, what if Sam and Adam go to like Nick?
That's what she thought too. She like somehow she like heard that they were reaching out to you guys or something, and like she thought maybe you guys might flip on them instead.
No,
that's what she's saying to Cooper in that meeting. She's saying like someone's gonna hit the buzzer, like we have to flip before they do.
That was the plan. That if basically me and Adam, once Bailey had spilled the details about the alliance to me, and she'd also told me like, oh, I don't trust like Sarah and Nick at all. Like I want to flip on them like soon. Me and Adam like talked, and we're both basically like, all right, like let's try and see if we can get Bailey to flip. And if she doesn't flip, we can just go to Nick and Sarah and tell them that like Bailey wants to flip on you. And then I feel like Bailey kind of like knew that would happen. So she's like, oh, if I don't agree to flipping, they could just like go to Nick and Sarah. But she could have also agreed to flip and then like still voted me out. But I think that she was just paranoid that like we would go to you guys, which to be fair, that was our plan. Like was to go to you guys next. Be like,
no, that's fair. Yeah, but the whole texting thing, I don't think that Bailey thought that we were talking, because that was one of the reasons it was so freaking suspicious, because I said in the Odawa, like original Odawa group message, like, hey, like it's really weird. Sam has not reached out to me at all. Like you'd think if he was on the bottom, like he would be trying to do something. And 30 seconds later, I get a text from you. So like, obviously someone in our chat had immediately texted you, but like, you have to reach out to Sarah. She's suspicious.
That's exactly what Bailey told me. She was like, oh, Sarah's suspicious. You weren't talking to her. You need to like reach out to her. And I was like, okay. I guess I didn't necessarily know that you had just texted like that very moment. Like if I'd known that, I probably would have waited like an hour or two, but
yeah,
that's tough.
It was just funny. Timing. I mean, obviously I didn't think enough about it as I should have, but I do have to go. I'm doing a Survivor draft with my family at 9:30.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I have to jump off, but this was fun. My sister said to tell Sam that he's a cutie. So she's enjoying watching you on the show.
Appreciate it. I have at least one fan.
Yeah, you have one. And, my sister, which she should be my fan, but.
Well, she was.
Yeah, not anymore.
She's a new fan now, so a new person. Yeah. Sarah, it's great talking to you, though. I'm really happy you got to come on here and we get to catch up and hear all of your thoughts. I'm sure the fans will be really excited to watch this too and hear from their queen. Yeah, it's been super fun. Thanks to my fans for believing in me when even I didn't. You were great. I'm glad you got your redemption. Like, you really deserve to have your shot, and I feel like you proved that you're a really good player. Yeah, I guess that's the other thing I want to say. I genuinely am so grateful that, people decided to bring me back and let me play again, because I am not even joking when I say that playing All-Stars was on my mind when I was applying to Michigan. I applied to a couple different public health schools, and it was not a factor. So I'm glad I was asked it, or else that would have been, more iffy decision. Well, you were one of the auto locks, which personally I remember thinking was kind of weird at the time. I was like, but I don't have any issue with it. Yeah, I don't know. I loved it. So thanks so much for having me. It was fun. You were great on the show. So I'm really glad you got to play All Stars. I think that you added a great thing to this season. Good. Yeah. All right. Bye, guys. All right. Talk to you later. See ya. One more thing. I know Sarah and Ian have already left, but
one of the things that we like to do here and Keep Your Torch Lit is ask the fans if they have any questions for the exit interview. And we didn't end up getting all these questions until after Sarah had to leave. But we still want to hear Sarah's responses to them. Got to do that. Got to hear what Sarah has to say. So what I'm going to do here is I've screenshotted these questions, sent them to Sarah. She's going to read them off and then provide her responses on recording. So here that is. Thank you for sending those questions in.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah again. I am here to answer some additional questions that people had on Discord. Thank you to Megan who said, can you just tell her we love her? Appreciate you. What purposes did I use my magnet board for that weren't Survivor related? Literally everything. I used it as like a chore wheel type thing for when Brian and I, like, we had just moved in together for the first time that during All Stars, like that semester when that season was. So there were a lot of hiccups, chore related hiccups. So we used it for chores. We used it, there's like a tallying system in one of the scenes. That was our game board score marker. So whoever won like the most games, anytime you would win a game, you'd put a check mark on there. We play a lot of Catan. We play a lot of like Wingspan, even like beer pong, flip cup. So anytime we'd win a game, you would get a check mark on the whiteboard. Do I keep up with George and Claire? I did not know George in a capacity beyond Survivor. So like I've texted with him occasionally, but no, I don't really keep up with George. Claire and I are still really good friends. We met freshman year of college, and have been really close ever since then. So I do still keep in touch with Claire. She's living her best life out in LA. LA is definitely harder for me to get to than New York was. So when she lived in New York, I would visit her all the time. But LA is just a lot more expensive and a lot further to get to. Next question. Sarah was on season 2 of production. How did she feel about Cooper as host? Were there any incidents during that time that added to the bad blood? Or did it all stem from being the first boot? It was first boot-itis. Cooper was great as a host. He was great on production. I love Cooper as a person. He's totally great and fine. We never really had any bad blood. I just wanted to vote him out because he had voted me out, and being a first boot was like semi-traumatic. So it did take me a long time to get over, and I just like wanted to get him back. And the season was called Revenge Tour. So like that really did drive a lot of like my confessional stuff was the theme of the season. So it was you were thinking about revenge, and just kind of leaning into that more than actually like really having it out for Cooper. How do I think I would have done if I stayed at Michigan throughout the first 4 seasons? Would I have made the list? That's like really hard to say. I kind of feel like I wouldn't have made the list. I don't know. I think it would have been different. I would have known a lot more people, obviously. I don't know how involved I would have been in the social scene of it, just because I wasn't that involved when I was there. Season 1 was different than later seasons because production did not allow people who were voted out to like come to events or like to challenges or tribal councils. So I didn't get to see anyone from season 1 or go to anything until the season 1 like reunion party where, you know, someone had already won. So there was that. And then during season 2, like I just didn't really hang out with the Survivor people that much. It was my last semester of college. I had, you know, previous relationships and previous friends that I was kind of prioritizing. It's possible that that could have changed. But I don't know. So hard to say. I feel like it would have been probably the same though. And I probably would have continued to go to like a couple things every now and then, but not really hang out with those people all the time. would I be willing to return for a season entitled Survivor Michigan All Stars? I do not plan on going back to school ever, so that probably wouldn't be viable. But if they ever do an orgy of All Stars, I'm definitely there for that. So that was all the questions. Last thing I want to say is I'm super grateful for all of the support that all of the fans have given me. It's been super humbling and exciting. But I do want to add that personally, I love this season of Survivor. Like, I think it's been so fun to watch. I think Ian has done an amazing job editing and like being so creative with how the story is told, making sure he's telling everyone's story so completely. Like, I know people were saying my episode boot was like much longer than necessary, but for me as a person going out, like, I wanted my attempts at a plan to be shown so I could see myself like kind of fighting to stay in the game. And I think everyone feels that way. So I appreciate the long episodes. And I feel like people should just kind of chill out a little bit. Like, no one's getting paid for this. This isn't CBS Survivor where like, you know, your feedback can really improve a future season because the same people are editing it and producing it every season. And again, like, no one's getting paid for this. The players, as much as you think we like signed up for this, we did not sign up for this. This was 3 years ago, where Michigan like had a very much smaller following when we were like, only season 1 was out when we signed up for this. So no one knew that this many people would watch it, this many people would be passionate about it, which is all literally fantastic and amazing. Just these players did not sign up to get mean comments online. So just keep that in mind when you're commenting. Like, root for your favorites. Don't say anything about people that are not your favorites. And that's just my opinion. Like, I don't want to chastise people. You can obviously do whatever you want, but I would never want people to think that I'm like on board for those types of comments. So anyways, that's it for me. This is my cat, Apollo. He's one of 3 I have. He's very cute. All right, bye everyone. I'm excited for the rest of the season. I hope you all are too.